This example here demonstrates the use of new and super with anonymous classes. And I've made this fairly complex structure of classes here just to show as many different features as I can, and just to prove that there's nothing really difficult about it. Okay, so right, we've got this P here, and it's of type P5, which of course is really P1.P2, etc. up to P5. And as you can see, they're all class P1 here, got P2 in it, and in that you've got P3, and in that you've got P4, and in that you've got P5. Some of these are abstract, and some of them are static, and so on. So here's how you create an anonymous class to satisfy that. Anyway, you start with new, and you do P1.P2.P3. You do that because these are all static. Here, P2 is static, and P3 is static, and so on. So we get down to P3, and we can just go straight in at that level because they're all static, member classes up to P3. So we can get to P3 and just do the new of that. Okay, so that's straightforward. And then of course we've got to pass what we've created into to the constructor for P4. Except I've got to be a little bit careful because it's an abstract class. So we do new like that for it, so cause the constructor to be passed into the next thing we do. And because this is P4's abstract, we have to create a concrete subclass of it, which we can do of course by using an anonymous class. So we do P4 like that, create an anonymous class for that, anonymous subclass of P4 that will create, and we put something in it. You can see P4's got this abstract method n here, so we've got to override that by putting some concrete implementation in, which we do like that. So that does that. That's got us down to P4, and then we need to pass that into P5. So we do .new and then P5. And just for good measure, because you can override P5 as well. And just to prove the point, I've added a method in there. Not that that would be much use because you've got no way to really call it, but just to prove the point that you can do that. Okay, so that wasn't really too difficult, I hope. Right, here's an example now where we have this class EX here which extends P5, and the way to do that is, well, here's the constructor for EX, and now we need to call the superclass, and the superclass is P5, so we do in fact more or less the same thing. There we go, down to there to create a P3, and that version of P3 has got to be passed into P4. P4's subclass of P4's constructor. Create a subclass of it there. Of course, what you put in here need not be the same as what you put in there, because even if it is the same, it won't be the same class involved in each case, because it's an anonymous class, so it's got a different number, a different name effectively. And when we get down to there, of course, we need to then pass that rod into super, which we do like that. Now, of course, if you happen to have an instance of P4 lying around, rather, I should say, an instance of a suitable subclass of P4, you could just use that as the enclosing class. But here I'm doing everything from scratch. So if I had an instance of a subclass of P4 lying around, I could just use a reference to that, .super, instead of all this lot. But here I've just made it from scratch. Okay, here's just to show something else. There's P1.P2, which is an instance of this here, and of course I could just say new P1.P2. But instead of doing that, what I'll do is create an instance of a subclass of that. In other words, we create an anonymous class of anonymous subclass of P1.P2 like that, and then of course rather than simply return that into p12, what I'll do is I'll call a method within it. This method reset there, which comes to return a p1.p2. So instead of just storing that straight away in p1.p2, I'm calling this first. Calling reset, and the effect of reset, as it happens, it returns this, which is the current class which you just made. But of course, in theory, it could return a different class. If I had another instance of p1.p2 lying around, I could pick that up and return it instead, and then it wouldn't be the class that you just created that got returned. That, of course, is very bad programming. You shouldn't do that. But I'm just trying to show as many different features and awkward things that could happen. Of course, you should never do that. It would be a really irregular sort of thing to do. People wouldn't expect it. In fact, people wouldn't really expect this either. But occasionally you see this sort of thing happening. Okay, that's probably what I want to show there.